Hey folks, Paul Moore here with BiggerPockets, and I am so excited to be here with you today for Ask Me Anything Real Estate. I've got my camera on and I've got my electric guitar here, and I'm challenging you, Brandon Turner, to a duel. Okay, so let's do it. Hey, okay, enough of that. Hey, everybody, I'm Paul Moore. I just thought I'd give a chance for a few people to join us today and have a little fun. So I am Paul, and I am with BiggerPockets and Wellings Capital, and I'm so excited that you are joining us today. Please leave your chat and your questions for a little bit later, because first of all, I'm going to tell you how to save $2 million in taxes and get an apartment to boot. Now you may think, Paul, how can I save $2 million in taxes when I don't even make $2 million? Well, we'll talk about that later. Hey, I want to make absolutely sure that you all can hear me, so I think you can. Nate Shields, thank you. Rock on yourself, man. Hey, I challenge you to a duel as well. Hey, seriously, if you are from a town somewhere or a county, please tell me where you're from. Tell me what you do, and we will get started in a second. I am going to talk to you today about how to save big time on taxes, how to acquire more commercial real estate with the same amount of money you were going to pay in taxes, and have nothing additional out of pocket and generate a significant cash flow in the meantime. So, thank you for your comments, folks. Hey, good to see you, Jonathan from New York, Clifford from Dallas, Gavin from St. Lucie County. All right, Anthony. Hey, thank you. That's kind. Hey, Caden. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Peggy. Hey, Kevin. Great to have you on. Peggy from Spring, Texas. Okay, so please give me a thumbs up, a like, a share. We want to make sure that BiggerPockets doesn't fire me, and that you all are getting all the value out about this, and we spread the word as widely as we can. So, hey, I heard an amazing story the other day. Now, love him or hate him, like I said in the show notes, love him or hate him, the real estate investor in chief in the White House and his friends around the Beltway have done huge favors for us real estate investors. You know, there's no better place to get a balance of return and risk and save a ton on taxes than in real estate investing. A partner from a law firm in Chicago looked at the new tax law when it came online in late 2017, and he said, oh my goodness, this is built for real estate investors. I wonder why. Well, anyway, hey, good to see you, Vika from Slovenia. That's awesome. Mademoiselle Jolie, thanks for joining us. Okay, hey, Damon from Fredericksburg, right down the road in Virginia. Okay, so I heard a story the other day I wanted to share with you, and then we can get into our Q&A today. It's going to be a short story, but it's really powerful. Okay, who knows what Section 179 of the IRS code is? Huh? Okay, thank you. So, Section 179 of the IRS code allows you to deduct deductions that would typically be depreciated, Kevin from Atlanta, out over, say, 15 years, 27 and a half years, or even 39 years. It allows you to depreciate these items in a shorter time. Okay, you can use something called a cost segregation study, right, Zach Gwynn? You can do a cost segregation study, and you can segregate out certain pieces of your real estate property and depreciate them in a shorter time frame, which means basically you can take lots of future tax deductions and write them off in the current year. That's right, Roscoe88. So you can do it as, let's say you were buying a multifamily property and you didn't do a cost segregation study. Basically, that means you would take the cost of the property, let's say it's $2.75 million, and deduct it over 27 and a half years. That's $100,000 a year deduction on your tax return, deduction from your income, okay? 100,000 a year over 27 and a half years. But let's say you did a cost segregation study and you divided out certain aspects of real property from personal property, okay? So the real property would be like the foundation, the walls, the structure itself, but personal property would be things like electric guitar. What am I saying? It would be like floor coverings, cabinets, countertops, light fixtures, electrical fixtures, water spigots, sinks, windows, roofs. These are things that can be deducted on a shorter time frame, like one Kevin Mantle, like 1, 5, or 10 year property. Yeah, right. So you can actually deduct these over a shorter time. Computer software, things like that can be deducted perhaps over, I think, 3 years. Okay, so if you have a roof, let's just say, that costs $1 million on a large apartment complex, you can actually take that over 15 years rather than 27 and a half. Okay, or if you're in a self-storage facility, 15 years instead of, I think it's 39 years for regular commercial property that's not residential. Okay, well, Section 179 of the IRS code has allows us to accelerate these deductions and put them into 1 year. Imagine taking your next 15 years of tax deductions on your tax returns and cram them all into 1 year. That is what Section 179 allows us to do effectively, okay? Anything that's 15-year property or 10 or 7 or 5 or 3 or 1 can all be deducted in the current year, which could create a massive loss for you that you can carry forward, okay? Now, if you're a QREP, a qualified real estate professional, and you can sometimes even deduct more in the current year than other folks. You can actually put it against your actual income, not just your profit and loss, not just your capital gains and such, okay? Now, I hope that makes sense. Now let me tell you the story, okay? There's a guy in Dallas who last year about this time, he was facing a $2 million income tax bill. I think it was his second year in a row he was facing a $2 million income tax bill. And he was setting aside this $2 million to pay his taxes. And he got to talking to his CPA and his tax strategist. By the way, I recommend your CPA is always a tax strategist. I wrote an article on this in BiggerPockets, why your CPA needs to be a tax strategist. But anyway, he was talking to his CPA, and the CPA pointed out that Section 179 would give him a lot of deductions, and he should think about that. And the light bulb went off for this guy. He realized, wait a minute, I'm setting aside $2 million to pay my taxes in about 6 months from now, April 15th of this year, 2019. He said, wait a minute. What if I took that $2 million, added $6 million of debt to it, so 25% down, 75% debt? What if I went out and bought an $8 million apartment building and did the cost segregation study? So that's what he did. Now follow me on this. He took the $2 million he would have paid Uncle Sam. Instead, he put it $2 million down on an apartment building, and that apartment building was an $8 million building. Now let's say the value of the land was 1.2 million of the 8 million. Follow me on this, Nate. Okay, so if it's an $8 million property, the value of the land is 1.2 million. I'm saying approximately. Okay, and so let's carve that off. You can't deduct that. You can't depreciate land. Now he has $6.8 million he could deduct over 27 and a half years, okay, from his tax return. Now, he did a cost segregation study on it, and it allowed him to deduct about 30% of that 6.8 million in 15 years or less, okay? 15 year or less. That's personal property. Again, that's roof, windows, fixtures, electrical outlets, all kinds of things, fans, all kinds of things that'll have to be replaced in 15 years or less typically, okay? Now, that 30% of 6.8 million happens to be 2.04 million, about $2 million, okay? Section 179 under the amended IRS code allows him to not take that over 15 years, but 1 year. He was able to reduce his tax burden in that year, 2018, by $2 million. Guess how much he owed Uncle Sam? Zero. I mean, he might have owed him for other stuff, stuff I don't know about, but for the $2 million he had set aside, he now owed zero because he bought this property and was able to do this compressed time schedule that was allowed by the new tax law. Folks, isn't that brilliant? I wish I'd have come up with it, But anyway, so he not only didn't have a tax bill, he also got an $8 million property that's now throwing off perhaps 5 or 10% a year, and it's appreciating as well. So good for him, good for the tax law. Now, will this work for you? Well, some of you it might. You might not have a $2 million tax bill, but do you have a $20,000 tax bill? And can you buy a $100,000 property and do this? Or do you have a $100,000 tax bill? Can you buy a $400,000 fourplex and maybe do the same thing with it? That's all I had to say about that. I just wanted to throw it out there and give you that thought and let you know again why we love commercial real estate investing. There must be a reason that most of the Forbes 400 are involved in commercial real estate investing to grow their wealth or to potentially perpetuate it. So that's my little spiel today. And I'm only 12 minutes in to this show. So now I'm going to go to Q&A. Now on the YouTube side, we've got my friend Dude Real Estate. Dude Real Estate is Nate Shields from Madison, Wisconsin, and he is helping answer questions. If you've put a question in and it doesn't get answered in the next minute or two, you may want to copy and paste it back in because there's already been, I'm guessing well over 100 come in on the YouTube side, 100 comments and questions, and there's no way I can get to all those. On the Facebook side, let me give it a try. So Kia, welcome back. Hey, so best offshore investment opportunities in your opinion, will you consider selling up in the U.S. now and moving funds off until U.S. market crashes, or do you think the crash won't happen soon? So Kia, I'm not normal. I am just super risk averse, and I really, really don't like risk, and I don't like the added risk of going offshore simply for the currency exchange issue alone. I mean, if you have a 25% gain, but your currency moves against you 25%, you're back to zero. And so I just really don't do that myself. I believe a lot of great investors do this, and my hat's off to you all. I just don't do it myself. Justin Freeman says, as a CPA, I hate cost segregation studies. It's just a timing difference, and even worse with the 20% QBI deduction. As a real estate investor, cost segregations are great though. Okay, so as a CPA, you don't like it, but as a real estate investor, which is what most of us are, we love it. Yeah, Justin, I get it, and I love promoting them. Thank you for saying that. Benjamin says, can you guys point me towards some good books or sources of info on tax strategies in the IRS codes referenced in this video? Benjamin, I've written about 4 articles in BiggerPockets. Again, I'm Paul Moore from Wellings Capital, and you can look those up. But I'm not a tax authority. People like Justin Freeman can probably help you. He's over here with you on Facebook. You can chat with him. I also have some tax strategists. You can reach out to me at my BiggerPockets profile, and I will tell you about some of the tax strategists I like. You can find them on BiggerPockets, okay? So there are BiggerPockets CPAs and tax strategists that can really help you. I hope that helps. Oh, there's also a book. BiggerPockets has one of their best books is on tax saving strategies for real estate investors. So if you like saving taxes, please give us a thumbs up, a heart, a like, and all that stuff. Okay, so Citrus Film says, Sophia, okay, you're answering somebody else. Thank you for answering each other, by the way. That is so awesome because you guys know things that I don't know. Someone said, I just recently bought Matt Faircloth's books on raising capital. I can't wait to read it tonight. Read it and learn from it. Matt Faircloth is a good friend of mine, and he is an awesome real estate investor. And I would highly recommend that you do get his book. What happens the following year with taxes? Jackie, I'm going to defer to the tax experts on that. I think that basically, in that guy's case, he probably used up all his deductions for that year. He can't carry forward a loss, which most of us would. And so I think he's going to have a tax bill the next year. He might have to redo this. But hey, what's wrong with getting a new $8 million apartment complex every year, right? Okay, so if you're not a real estate agent, how do you qualify as a QREP? Good question, Kevin. So a QREP is a qualified real estate professional. There are five things you have to do to qualify. The main two are, number one, you have to have over half of your time spent at work spent on real estate of some kind, real estate investing. And then it has to be over 750 hours per year. So that means you have to work over 1,500 hours. Wait, if you work 1,500 hours a year, that's like an average of 30 hours a week, then you need to put at least half of that on real estate investing. Okay? So, Kevin, that's the main two qualifications. A lot of people who have jobs, like let's say I know a woman who is a doctor, she makes a ton of money from that. Well, her husband doesn't have a really demanding job. He went out and got into real estate investing, and he gets the QREP designation for both of them. So if you have a spouse that can possibly designate as a QREP while you keep your job, gals, guys, either way, that is a great way to go. All right. So Zima, I know I'm saying that wrong, Burden. What do you think about properties in previous natural disaster cities such as Georgia and Florida? Yeah, I'd be worried about insurance expenses as well. And I don't, I'm not an expert in that, but I would think that, a lot of people are still buying in Georgia and Florida. So, I don't really know. I know Florida, California, Nevada, and Arizona, and Northwest North Dakota are places I try to avoid because prices are they go so high and then they go so low. And I don't like that extra risk, just like I don't invest in foreign countries for that same or similar reason. Jordan Barta says, in REI, what are the most common tax misses and how do you avoid them? Yeah, one big miss is just doing the cost segregation study. Another one is classifying deductible repairs as capital expenses and allowing them, to be deducted over 15 years when they could have been deducted in the current year. So there's lots of things like that. Not being a direct real estate investor is another big mistake. In other words, you want to be someone who gets a K1 from your real estate. You don't want to get a 1099. And if you are investing in a syndication or a fund like my company does, then you will get a K1 and you'll have an opportunity to get all these deductions. So I'm going to do my best to answer some YouTube questions here. Nate is doing a great job recommending that. What kind of books do you recommend on getting started in real estate syndication? There's a great book by Gene Trowbridge. I think it's called It's a Whole New Ball Game or something. It's TROWBRIDGE. Jillian Sidoti spoke at the BiggerPockets conference in Nashville 3 weeks ago. Her partner's Gene Trowbridge. He's got a great book on syndication. There's also a book by Steve Burgess called The Complete Guide to Buying and Selling Apartment Buildings. There are currently no great books that I know of on self-storage, but I know a guy who's writing a book on self-storage will be published by BiggerPockets next year, so can't wait for that. Mobile home parks, there's not a whole lot of great books on that. But those are the asset classes I'm currently involved in. Jonathan Cook says, is Connected Investor Exchange a reliable source to find hard money and ABL lenders? I'd like somebody else to answer that, Jonathan, because I have never heard of it. Maybe Nate's heard of it. Charlotte says, do you do tax sale overages? No, I don't. I got into that a little bit in the year 1999, I think, but I don't know much about it. Don, you can buy a couple mobile homes for my park. I have space. Okay, you guys are doing business on here. I love it. BiggerPockets loves you. Cody Barnett says, I have a question. I want to invest in real estate, but I feel like everyone wants to get in real estate. Sure seems like it, doesn't it? Why is it such a good investment when it's one of the most common and popular investments? Cody, I am so glad you asked, and I could spend the rest of our half an hour or whatever on that. Cody, it's really, really hard to get in the most popular asset classes right now, like single family flips, single family buy and holds, multifamily. But I'll tell you what, there are certain asset classes that have big holes in the ownership base. And what I'm talking about is mom and pop owners. Okay, folks, you might want to write this down. If you want to learn how to do an end run, that's a football term, played for 12 years, got a neck injury. If you want to learn how to do an end run around most of the other real estate investors out there, you need to learn to buy from mom and pop sellers. And there's two asset classes I know that have a ton of mom and pop sellers. That it won't last forever, but my friends, this is a place you can do it right now. Okay? It's mobile home park investing and self-storage investing. And I just happened to write 2 special reports on those topics. If you want to get a copy of the special reports, if anybody on here asks me how to get those, I will tell you. But I don't want to shove it down your throat, you know. So Jerry Van says, where would be a good starting point for young investors? Should it be creative first, personal, or on business first credit? Jerry, I would try to do home equity line first, and then I would go from home equity to business credit later. Good starting point for investors. It depends what level you want to come in, Jerry. A lot of people start with flipping houses. I know I did. And then they graduate to single family rentals, and they go to multifamily, and then they go, wait a minute, why did I ever do single family? I should have done multifamily or commercial of some type all along. All right, so a bunch of people said I want to get a copy. So self-storage can be overbuilt. It's really important that you find mom and pop sellers, lady plants. So the place to get that is go to my Wellings Capital website, and you need to put in this address, Wellings Capital, that's WELLINGS, CAPITAL, wellingscapital.com/resources. Okay? If you give us your first name and email address, we will send you both of those reports. You can also reach out to me on my BiggerPockets profile. And again, I'm Paul Moore, Moore from Wellings Capital. I'm the guy with the guitar dude real estate. And I'm still challenging Brandon, and he hasn't come out of the woodwork yet. I guess he's in Hawaii, so it's still morning there. Maybe he's surfing. But anyway, you can go to my BiggerPockets profile, Paul Moore at Wellings Capital, and you can get a copy, ask for a copy of those special reports on self-storage and mobile home parks. Isn't that right, Zach Gwynn? Okay, so you're welcome, Jerry. Okay, do you think wholesaling is a great way to get started in real estate? I think it's a fantastic way to get started in real estate, but I want to be clear, it's very, very, very time intensive. You've got to find a way to do an end run in wholesaling just like you do if you want to get into commercial. And there's a way to do an end run in wholesaling, and I'm going to tell you real quick. It's called driving for dollars. Lots of big companies, like my friend in Roanoke, Virginia, who sends 60,000 pieces of mail a month to try to find houses to wholesale in Little Roanoke, Virginia. Seriously? But you need to drive for dollars. You need to get under the radar of all those guys, and you need to find deals on your own. My son spent, I think it was like 40 hours driving around, and he found 20-some houses that looked abandoned. And so that's what I would recommend you do to get involved in wholesaling. The other way to do it is check with my friend Chad Corbett. And I don't have his website in front of me, but look up Chad Corbett. He has an incredible system for finding leads for vacant houses and houses that have been through probate and estates. Okay? I hope that helps. Randy says, what about free land, venture, private money? Don't know anything about it. If anybody does, please answer Randy. Matt says, I have a possible $30,000 to $40,000 to pay in taxes. Help. Matt, if you heard the beginning of my show, I told you how you might be able to avoid all that tax. Matt, please go back and watch the video because I covered that in detail. Yeah, look up Chad Corbett. You spelled it right, Lady Plants. Citrus Films. Hey, thanks for coming again. And should I just keep reading or listening to podcasts, or is there anything else I can do? Not sure what you're asking exactly. Tina says, I can't hear you. Can anyone else not hear me? If you can hear me or cannot hear me, just one person or two, just say you can or can't. Of course, if you can't hear me, you wouldn't know I asked that question. Oh boy, I'm in trouble. What do I do, Zach? Anyway, David says, hi, Paul. Met you at the BiggerPockets conference. Just read your perfect investment book. Super good read from a fellow engineer. Thanks, David. Appreciate that. Okay. Other people say you can hear me. That's awesome. Thanks, Dude Real Estate. All right. 3D CAD Tutor says, how can I choose a good mortgage broker at once? Every time I meet a broker for a discussion only, they ask me for my social security number and personal info, even if I'm not ready to borrow. Gosh, there should be people on here who can help you with that. I would say go on BiggerPockets and ask that question on one of the forums. I would guess you should be able to find somebody. I would check with a local credit union or maybe a local bank where people aren't as heavy-handed as some of the mortgage brokers, I guess. Leon says, spent many years to save $200,000 and a $125,000 HELOC, that's a home equity line of credit, to one day invest into buy and hold multifamily. Should I spend my capital in this market or wait to see if a recession happens to do my first deal in Florida? Okay, Leon, I'm not a big fan of doing multifamily in Florida because of the huge ups and downs, but especially now. It's over the top expensive, and I highly recommend you consider waiting, especially if you're going to do Florida. Okay, Giggity Goo 52, thanks for coming back on. I saw you here a week or two ago. Would owning commercial real estate apartments affect your ability to qualify for owner occupancy loans like FHA? I don't think so. Nate, can you help? I've never heard that. No one's ever asked me that, but I'm pretty sure that you'll be fine. Lady Plants, I want to buy an apartment building. Someone help me. I know the area. Do you have an apartment building in mind? Somebody here would probably love to help you. Tell us where you are or tell us anything you can. Art T says, how would you set up this seller finance deal? Manufactured home, 3-1, $950 rent, studio and back for $450. All needs $15,000 in work. She wants $60,000 more than I want. Down, asking $145,000 total. Okay, so it's a manufactured home. So Art, is it a mobile home on a private lot? And does it have a foundation or is it tied down? Or is it a mobile home on a mobile home park lot? And of course, then it'll just be tied down, not on a foundation. Or is it a modular home? Help me out here, and I'll try to answer when you put the answer to that in. Randy says self-directed IRA. I'm a huge fan of self-directed IRA, folks. And if you didn't know, you can roll over your 401k from work into a self-directed IRA either before or after you quit your job, and you can direct it into any kind of real estate you want. Okay, so Art says it's on a private lot. Is it tied down or on a foundation? You want to try to get it on a foundation. You can get better financing on it. I would generally avoid mobile homes. I've owned 4 mobile homes in my life, and they've been a nightmare. In fact, next week on Halloween, I'm going to tell Halloween horror stories, and that'll be one of them. So Art, sorry to burst your bubble. Oh, it's a modular home, but it's not on a fixed foundation. Well, if it's a modular home, I would first of all put a real foundation under it. Spend about $6,000 to do that instead of having it tied down. And then I would actually, let's see, what was your original question? So 60,000 down, asking 145 total. Yeah, I would rent it. And I mean, if you want to buy and hold, you can do that, or you could try to flip it. Make sure the ARV, the value after you do the 15,000 repairs, is far more than what you're paying for it. I mean, I guess that's kind of common sense. But I don't have any other answer for you on that. Plant-based nurse. Hey, I just asked a financial broker about self-directed IRAs. He said he'd never heard of it. Did you know 97 or 98% of the money in 401ks and IRAs in the country is in regular stocks, bonds, and mutual funds? Think about the trillions of dollars that could be freed up to invest in real estate. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to drive up real estate prices. Never mind. Anyway, seriously, there's a lot of financial planners who don't know about self-directed IRAs. It's stunning. If you guys need references on great self-directed IRA firms, we change those all the time. So I don't want to make a video here and just say once and for all that you will always want to use these particular companies. So reach out to me. I will say there's a lot of great IRA firms. One is Cama Plans. That's C-A-M-A. Tell Carl Fisher, the owner of Cama Plans, that Paul Moore sent you. I do not get paid for that. I just met him at a BiggerPockets conference for the third or fourth time the other day, though. Giggity Goo 52 says, you talked about hotels. Do you have any opinions on Airbnb? Do I? Yes. Folks, I was at the BiggerPockets National Conference the other day, and I met a couple guys. I already knew them by phone a little bit. And they're making $70,000 a month. They don't even own any property. They're doing corporate arbitrage. That's corporate long-term landlording deals and Airbnb. And they're making $70,000 a month gross. That's $30,000 or more a month in net profit. Check that out. All right, Sarah, special reports. You can reach out to me at my BiggerPockets profile or check it out. Check us out on wellingscapital.com/resources. Kevin says the broker wants a commission. That's why. Yeah, probably so. Matt says, I'm looking to do my first deal. I've got $35,000 to $45,000 in taxes that will be due this year. What can I do? Matt, hurry up. As soon as this video is over, go back and watch the first 12 minutes of this video. That's exactly what I addressed. Claudia says, what percentage of funds value would you put into a flip? Claudia, can you give me a more detailed question? I'm sure that makes sense, but I'm just not totally clear on what you're asking. I want to make sure I want to answer it correctly. Sorry about that. I have a self-directed account. It works great. Someone says, may the Schwartz be with you. Says, I guess what I'm trying to find out is the rental value after I repair, not really a selling price. All right, so I missed your earlier question. Sorry about that. D. Brooks says, I find an apartment building worth $69,000. I rent it out for $760 a month. Okay. Someone says, what are some great questions to ask potential investors when you first meet them at real estate networking events? It depends on your goal. Tell me more about your goal. And Dude Real Estate can try to answer that too. Why do real estate investors give their real estate license back? A lot of people, Anthony, don't want to be known as a licensed real estate broker. They feel like it constricts them, makes them look more like an expert, makes people suspicious of them. So they give up their real estate license. I tell you, a lot of people think it's better to have a license than not. And so I personally have a license. But anyway, D. Howell says, how do I get a copy? I think you got the answer. Thanks, Jordan. Marcel says, would you advise a newbie to buy first investment with hard money? Yeah, you can. I have a friend who's been doing it for almost 20 years and he's still using hard money. So, David says, I went to the courthouse and pulled up some tax lien properties. What would be a good way to start investing in these properties? David, I'm not an expert in tax lien properties, but if you're in the right state, you should probably get a mentor or a coach or a training program. You can probably do that for under $1,000, or just go on BiggerPockets and read all the blogs and forum posts about investing in tax lien certificates. That is a great question. You're right, Lady Plants. May the Schwartz be with you says, my earlier question is, how do I determine after repair rental value? Oh, okay. Let's say I fix the kitchen floors, etc. How do I find out how much more I can expect in rental income? Okay, so first of all, don't assume that you're going to get out a lot more money just because you made those improvements, although you should use comps, especially with residential real estate and commercial, use comps. that's my answer, actually. That's my whole answer. Use comps. Comparable properties. Vinayaraj Pillai says, do you use land trusts in your investing? Yes, I do. And especially when I do lease options or lease options sandwiches, which, by the way, I highly recommend you all use rent to own or lease option sandwiches, especially if you're early in your real estate investing career. John Riley says, how's the best way to handle capital gains taxes on a flip? I mean, you can't do a 1031 exchange legally on a flip unless you lived in the property or plan to hold it for a while first. So I don't know any way to avoid it. But you can do a 1031. If you have a huge gain and a huge expensive flip, you can use a deferred sales trust. But you're talking about like $500,000 or $1 million property or more. Claudia, I don't know the answer to your question. You're welcome, Vinajay. Okay. Buying a $300,000 investment, is there a suggested limit on how much to spend on the rehab? Claudia, the answer is basically you're going to want to spend like under 75% of the after repair value total. So if you are buying a house that's worth $200,000 fixed up, if you pay $120 for it, and then you put in perhaps up to $30,000 in rehab, you'll be at $150. House is worth $200. That's about your limit, more or less. William Leininger and Peggy Sheffer says they like to know about the lease option sandwich. Randy says, tell me about buying with subject to. Okay, so folks, I'm going to try to go over this one time. There's hardly anything out there in books and online about this. So I'm going to try to go over the rent to own or lease option sandwich. If you have any questions, you might want to hold them because it's going to take me a minute to go through this. But this is one of the most powerful things you can do as a new real estate investor. And I've got friends who still do it today after years in the business. So it's called a rent to own or lease option sandwich. What you do is you find a distressed seller, say someone in the courthouse steps. They're about to lose their house to foreclosure, and you approach them, maybe in person, maybe by phone, and you say, hey, I would like to try to save your foreclosure and make this an investment for myself. So step one is you contact the owner. You find out how much they owe on their mortgage, okay? Then you find out how much they owe in back payments, like missed payments, penalties, late fees, and attorney's fees, and newspaper publication fees, or the fees that they owe. So let's say, I'm going to use a real example that I did near Roanoke, Virginia. Okay, so the house was worth about $175. The guy had bought it for like $150. He had paid down the mortgage to $140, but I think he had like $6,000 in late fees. So he had to pay $146 to pay it off. He was about a week or two away from the courthouse steps from losing the house to foreclosure. Okay. So we went to him and we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay your $6,000 to get you caught up on your mortgage so you don't have the courthouse steps issue. Okay. And so, but you have to move out. So we signed a contract with him. He would move out. He would leave it nice and clean. Then we basically took his property and put it into a land trust, in answer to your question earlier. Okay, we put it in a land trust. There's way more detail than I want to go into on that. Let's suffice it to say we did that. Then we immediately cleaned it up, painted the front door, mowed the grass, and then we found a rent-to-own buyer. Now, we tried to find somebody with bad credit who needed to get a house that they wanted to buy, but they couldn't qualify for a mortgage. And we put them in the house and we had them pay us, I think it was like an $8,000 deposit for the rent to own. So let's say we got $8,000 in. We spent $6,000 to pay the guy's back payments off. So we immediately put $2,000 in our pocket. Okay. Then he started paying a monthly mortgage payment. I think it was like $1,200 a month, which was $1,000 in rent plus $200 towards his future purchase. Okay, there's a lot more detail here that I don't want to go into, but anyway, he's paying us $1,200 a month, and we're making direct payments on the former owner, the former occupant's mortgage of, say, $800 a month. So we're making $400 a month profit. And we did that for about 3 years, okay? Then at the end of the time, we already had a preset price. If you close on this in 1 year, you pay 180. If you close on it in 2 years, it's like 185. If you close on it in 3 years, it was like 195. So we closed on it in 3 years. He paid us 195. Now remember, we had the mortgage already from paid down to 140 when we got it. So it was paid down to, let's say, 135 when we sold it. He paid us 195. So that's $60,000 minus the $8,000 he paid us up front, minus the $200 a month that went toward his payment. All the rest of that, let's call it $25,000, $30,000, went to our pockets as profit. And when he closed on it, he got his own mortgage and he went his happy way. The original owner was still on the mortgage until then, so he had to keep the mortgage in his name for 3 years, but at least he avoided foreclosure. So we helped the buyer, we helped the seller, and we helped ourselves. Everybody won. And if you're asking if the due on sale clause was triggered in the mortgage, it was not. And I've never heard of one that was triggered, by the way. That's one of the reasons for the land trust, but there's other reasons. Talk to your attorney. I'm not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV. That's a dumb joke from the 70s, Nate. Don't make fun. Paulo says, are tax deeds a good way? I don't know really that much about that, but I think you should look on BiggerPockets. It's the greatest place in the world to find information like that. What does the 70% represent when calculating the ARV? In some markets, it's different. Yeah, Leo. So I'm just saying you want to spend up to about 70% of the after repair value total. I said 75 earlier, but say 70, 75%, maybe 65%. It depends on the price of the property too. If it's a $2 million house, you may be able to spend up to 80% and still make a nice profit. If it's a $50,000 house, you might only want to spend up to 60% at most. I mean, 60% of 50,000, that's 30. That's only going to leave you less than 20,000 for profit after you pay closing costs and realtors if you need to do that. Rick Jones says, hi, Paul. Hey, Rick. How are you? Tha Aloha says, were your ancestors slave owners? I don't know because I was adopted, but I would guess they might have been. And I'm going to take this moment to say this. If I was alive in the 1800s, I'm so glad you asked that, Tha. I'm not sure why you asked that question. Was it because of my guitar playing earlier? I don't know. But did you know, folks, did you know that if you took the record profits, not the average profits, but the record profits from Apple, GM, Starbucks, and Nike, added those together, double that number, that'd be the approximate revenues generated every year by human trafficking. It's a horrible thing. It is slavery. And so I'd like to believe if I was alive in the mid-1800s, I'd been an abolitionist fighting against slavery. If I'd have been alive or an adult in the 1960s, I would like to believe I'd have been fighting for civil rights. Well, this is slavery. It is a civil right. And it has been ripped away from tens of millions of people. And I'm talking about 40 million people, but think of all the other collateral damage to families as well. And so I am trying to do everything I can to fight this evil, and I would invite you all to join me. Check out freedomplaceproject.com. We're not taking any donations, but we're planning on building a $1 billion office complex in Dallas. And we're going to use all the profits to fight human trafficking and rescue its victims. We're not taking any money, but if you do want to donate, you can donate to Exodus Cry, exoduscry.com, or there's IJM, which is International Justice something or other. And so I don't know them as well, as you can tell. So Raven says, okay, so I plan on doing a BRRR, but only use the lender's money at the beginning. Okay, cool. Benji Barker says, do I need to fix my credit before I start investing in real estate? Benji, great news. You can use a rent-to-own or lease option sandwich if your credit's bad. So the seller, the buyer, and you can all have bad credit, and that strategy still works. It's a beautiful thing. Vinajraj says, did you escrow the deed? Okay, you're asking somebody else. Jay Romano says, how to negotiate with unsophisticated sellers. Act unsophisticated yourself. That'll help. Seeing a lot of people trying to sell homes they grew up in and parents that were there for 50 plus years. Jay, try to get a home equity line, try to get cash. Don't take advantage of these people, for goodness sakes. We don't need to do that as real estate investors, but you can still get a good deal. You can tell them to get an appraisal, or you can just use the tax assessment. Thank you, Don Reef. Jay Romano says emotions lead to unrealistic pricing. I don't think I answered your question, Jay Romano, very well. So emotions lead to unrealistic pricing. Exactly. Well, sometimes you just have to walk away, or just be ready to walk away. Check out the book, folks, called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. He will teach you to negotiate like nobody else. Okay. Ty T says, I'm looking for a private 3 to 5 year private loan to finance initially. Should I get the deal first or secure the money first? Absolutely get the money lined up first. I think that's a pretty easy one. I agree, Nate. Zach says, what ROI are you looking for? Does this change when scaling into larger units? The ROI can also be called the cap rate, and cap rates used to run about 10%. And now cap rates are shrinking, compressing down to the 5 or 6% rate. So try to do better than that, folks. Try to get a 7 or 8% ROI at least, not including the payment of the mortgage. Zamia says, great idea is to donate to buy a brick for the building I used to fundraise for the Army. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so you can also, that's great, Zamia. Thank you so much. What's the book again, please? It's called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Roxo88 says, in regard to the example you gave about the rent-to-own sandwich, let's say it's year 2 and their water is coming in through the roof. It needs a whole new roof. Who would have covered that? Well, you can call, actually the buyer, the tenant buyer is on the hook for every repair after he's been there for 30 days. You or the seller, the original seller, are at risk for the first 30 days. Or you can just tell them, do your own home inspection. You're responsible. You're the buyer of this home. You be responsible. You're putting down the $8,000 or whatever deposit. You be responsible. Okay, that's one of the beautiful things about rent to own and lease options is you make the tenant buyer responsible. And if I seem passionate about that, I am, because I love that component of lease options and rent to own. Zach Fair says, Paul, when it comes to fixing the house before you buy, is it included in the money I borrow from the bank, or should I use my own money? Yeah, borrow as much as you can, as long as you're borrowing safely and responsibly. I mean, yeah, sometimes you have to put in your own money. Raven Entertainment says, I live in Minnesota and there seems to be very little listings for duplex townhomes for sale. If you live near Minneapolis, check Eric Eickhoff. That's EricEickhoff. Eric Eickhoff. And Eric Eickhoff is a great realtor for condos, townhomes, duplexes, etc. And I'd highly recommend you check with them. If you're not in Minneapolis, check with Eric anyway. He might know somebody in your town in Minnesota. That's the best answer I can give you. He deals in that exact specialty. So that's why I'm saying this. You're welcome, Raven. Jerry Mills says Richard Gifford. Okay. I'm sorry, I might have missed something. So Marcel says, would you advise a newbie to buy first investment with hard money? I already answered that. Sorry. Yes, I would say that's okay to do that. Of course, if you can get a home equity line of credit, it's better. Paul, did you have to escrow the deed, mortgage, etc. for the original owner in your sandwich deal? No. Did you also buy new insurance on the house, or did you keep the original insurance? Great question. You can keep the original insurance, but you might want to absolutely need to make the payments yourself. By the way, the mortgage company is going to be checking to make sure you kept insurance in place. Rick says, did you get more borrowing power from banks or hard money lenders with an LLC when the members have good jobs? but bad or marginal credit? I don't know how to answer that, Rick. Maybe you can ask it again in a different way, but I don't think I know. Nate, maybe you can check on that. I'm sorry. Edwin says goal is to eventually live off rental properties, but I don't have much capital. Should I flip until I raise more capital? Yes. Or start buying and holding right away? No, I'd flip some. And you might want to flip and then hold, flip and then hold, and alternate those. Leo says, what are your thoughts on using call loop for cold calling? What's the difference between call loop and call rail? I don't know. Great question. I would recommend using one of those type of services, but I don't know the difference between the two. Okay, Matt says, your brief outlook for real estate investing in the next year. Warren Buffett says he will not do any more predictions. He's only done one or two predictions ever, to my knowledge. And so it's really hard to say. I would say that, Matt, that I think that we've hit a new normal in cap rates. And that doesn't mean it's different this time. That doesn't mean there's not going to be a downturn. Of course, there's going to be ups and downs always because there's people involved and they have emotions. Even bankers have emotions. And there's always going to be ups and downs. But I think that we've kind of hit a new, as long as interest rates are severely depressed, then cap rates are going to be severely compressed as well, I think. So if the normal before was 8 or 9%, and we went around up and down above and below that median, I think the new normal might be 5.5 or 6.5%, and then that's the new median. Okay, so we are getting toward the end of our time together. And so here's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to take a drink of coffee here, and I'm going to ask if you haven't got your question answered, especially whether you're on any of the three platforms here. I'm watching three screens. Please copy and paste it back in, and we will try to rapid fire answers to your questions as fast as we can. Okay, so someone says, how to learn to close own deals without an agent. Difficult to find investment-minded agents. Yeah, just learn everything you can from BiggerPockets and read all the books and do all the podcasts you can. Thanks, Kent Rock. Appreciate it. Do you need all the upselling that online LLC creators offer? Nicholas, I wouldn't think so. I think you can do your own LLC, and I don't think you need to take all those upsells. If you need those, you can add some of that stuff later. Thanks for great question. Dude Real Estate, who is Nate Shields in disguise in Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you so much, Dude Real Estate. How'd you like my Van Halen riff at the beginning, Nate? You didn't say. Zach says, doing all the work on my BRRR, should I delegate instead of learning the process ins and outs and stay focused on looking for opportunities? Zach, if you're early in the process, it's good if you learn the business and then you'll be able to manage contractors better. That's one of the big mistakes I made on my quest to lose money, apparently, about 20 years ago when I started flipping houses. So I'd stay involved. Bryant says, should I be using property management for a 4-family owner-occupied property? Great question, Bryant. I would say whenever you can use property management. Honestly, you'll go crazy if you try to manage everything yourself. I know it's a big pain, and there are certain people who can manage and continue to grow their portfolio, but most people can't do it for long. So hopefully that helps. Tawella says, what city would you recommend investing in a house hack in Georgia? Well, obviously Atlanta's hot, but there's other places that are as well. Atlanta might be a little overheated right now, Tawella, so maybe you can find, I would do any city. There are cities in Georgia that are over 500,000. I would go to any city over 500,000. Check out the net population migration. Check out the unemployment. You want a low rate, of course. Check out the diversity of employers. Make sure they have medical, government, and education, and look for things like that. And then look for an area town that's underserved. Edwin says, would you say the market's turning and flipping is more risky than before? Edwin, there's going to become a day when everybody holding a flip house is going to be sorry, especially in places like Florida and California. So that day could come, but I don't know when that'll be. Claudia, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Metal Bum says, I purchased a building and spent $100,000 in improvements first year. Can I write off all first year through bonus depreciation or cost segregation some way? The $100,000 was part of the loan. It was financed. Metal Bum, you can get an answer by doing an inexpensive cost segregation study, especially if the building's worth, obviously it's worth $100,000 or much more than that. You should definitely don't get an engineering study. I know people are going to criticize me for saying this, but just get your basic cost segregation study for a couple $1,000s. Do I know anything about the Philadelphia market? Do I think it's too saturated? Ty, I don't. I was in Philadelphia last weekend at a BiggerPockets Mid-Atlantic conference, but I'm sorry. Good resource for renting by the room method. I don't have any resources for that. Great question. I do have an amazing resource for these corporate rentals. I told you the guys were making $30,000 a month profit. His name is Al, and I don't have his contact information handy, but if you reach out to me on my BiggerPockets profile, I can get you a discount on Al's program. Jackie, thank you. That's very kind of you. After buying your own house using an FHA loan, when can you rent it out? I think it's after a year, Jackie. I think you have to stay there a year. Kent Rock says, where can I find meetups? Check out meetup.com, or also post something here on BiggerPockets to look for meetups. Like I said, we're coming to the end of our show. And so if you have any questions, any last questions, I guarantee if I haven't seen it yet, I won't see it. So copy and paste it back in, and I'll try to get to a few last questions. Hey, it's our annual scary, spooky Halloween. That was terrible, wasn't it? I should have played guitar. Nate, why didn't I just play guitar? Why did I have to do that? Anyway, seriously, we're going to do our scary, spooky Halloween horror story at 4:30, I think, Eastern, next October 31st, which is 6 days from now. So please come out. If you want to hear some horror stories, if you want to hear some terrible investments, if you want to hear about awful things, come on out and check out our annual Halloween horror story. Zach Gwynn from BiggerPockets, thank you so much for setting this up today. And I really appreciate all of you. I am amazed that I get to do this, truly. And I'm so thankful for you all. Thanks. Hats off to Dude Real Estate. Check his stuff out over on, where are you, Dude Real Estate? Facebook or YouTube. He's got some really good training stuff and some educational platform stuff. But really, folks, if you missed the first 12 minutes, literally, it's one of the coolest things I've ever been able to share on BiggerPockets. And I hope you got to hear it, how one guy saved $2 million in taxes, and he actually got an apartment building, an $8 million apartment instead for that same $2 million he would have handed to Uncle Sam. Now that is a non-horror story that we can all enjoy. Okay? So, hey, folks, thanks again. And I really appreciate all you. I'm amazed I get to do this. Thanks, BiggerPockets. Thanks, Zach. And we will see you next time here at BiggerPockets Livestream. Take care.